sure, but I always say, okay, so let's do it. And I think we're live. Who knows? We'll find out soon enough. It is Sunday, the 8th of July, and it's just dawned on me that the date in the show notes is wrong, but that's fine. No one's going to notice. At least,
no, it's fine.
Not yet.
The year's right. That's fine.
I hope it's right. I'm joined by the wonderful voice of Daryl Baxter and his face, because this is a video podcast if you're watching it on YouTube.
First time for me.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? So,
see how it goes.
Daryl's voice is one you might recognise because friend of the show, Greg Morris, is IRL friends with Daryl.
Certainly is.
Though I don't know if anyone would call their relationship with Greg a friendship.
No. Love-hate relationship, maybe?
Now, I want to start this podcast the only way I know how, which is by talking about something that is completely unrelated to tech. So, the first topic, I promise is going to be short. It's less a topic, more a question. And the question is it coming home?
I'm off. I'm going now. Shortest podcast ever. Yeah, it could be. I hope so. I think it's at that point, isn't it, now, where it's actually the first time in 18 years. So, who knows? This time next week, we could be doing it. Who knows? So, in answer to your question,
but I always say okay.
I think so. Yes. Yeah.
We shall see indeed. Oh, and Paul is in the chat. Hey, how are you? I'm not even going to disagree with your point. I haven't live streamed in over a month, so of course I'm a noob. But yeah, we'll see, I guess. Who knows?
Yeah.
That is probably the most sane answer.
Yeah, we will see.
And then,
but it's encouraging.
And then secondly, I'm going to do something really British and complain about the weather, in that it is way too hot.
Yes, absolutely. I gave up today. I just stayed in.
Because strictly speaking, I am very much a winter person. And I was complaining about the heat like a week ago. And this person messaged me like, dude, you can't complain about summer weather. Like, and I'm like, yeah, I can. I can complain about whatever I want. I'm British. 60% of my free time is spent complaining about random stuff I have no control over. Like, come on.
Absolutely, yeah. If you ask my friends, they'll go, it's like 80% of my time that I spend complaining, even Greg. So, yes, absolutely. The weather is just driving me mad now. Like yesterday, I tried to go into town and I could only take about 2 hours worth. And I was like, I can't do it anymore. So I got to McDonald's and went home. Just now.
Yeah, I am. It's bad when I have to drink water with ice in it just to like keep me cool. And what's even worse is this studio is on the third floor of a house, and it is heavily insulated to the point where it's too hot here in the winter, never mind in the summer.
I know exactly what you mean, because my house, the room I'm in now, it's facing the garden, and the sun likes to be there a lot of the time, so it's just coming right in, and this is as close as I can get in the shade now in the room, but it's still very warm.
It is ridiculous. And there's like a noticeable change as you go down the stairs of like just relative coolness. But hey, it's the suffering we go through for podcasts.
It is, yeah. All worth it in the end.
Oh, we hope so, at least. So, I guess the first actual tech topic is going to be about the Outpost show, because it's the podcast that you created and host. Mutual friend Greg Morris has been on the Outpost show, so if you want more of him, which you probably don't, you should go listen to that. But in preparation for this podcast, I should mention I was doing some research, and what I will say is you're a hard person to research outside of like your own links.
Yes.
And it dawned on me that part of the reason I haven't done a podcast in about a month and a half has been that I've been busy, and then part of it is that I haven't been in the world of tech. I took a look at my podcast listens, and the last time I listened to the BYOD podcast, or the last time I listened to any podcast that was tech related, at least, was actually the last time you were on the BYOD podcast.
Oh, right. That's a nice coincidence.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh, I should
Wow.
scroll back through the archives because I'd remembered you'd been on it relatively recently. I was like, oh, I should scroll back. I was like, oh, it's the last one I listened to.
Brilliant. That works out.
So explain to the audience what the Outpost show is and why they should go listen to it.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, it's kind of that first series of it, and it's all about the iPad. So how guests use their iPads in a certain way, whether it's for a profession, a hobby, or just using it to watch films or read some comic books. And I try and make it casual as well, because I've said on a few episodes on Outpost Show as well that there's a lot of podcasts out there that try and be too serious, almost too philosophical on tech.
Yeah.
And I just want to make it a bit more, a bit of a laugh, a bit casual, kind of like how you just go down to a pub and you just like talk to a few friends and that about like the casual things. And I think it's been received well at the moment. The last episode with Matt Gemmell has been really good. And I'm going to be recording another one tomorrow, which is going to go out the Monday after. So I'll try and do it fortnightly, because I kind of find that if you do it weekly, people just kind of get sick of it in a sense. So I think fortnightly is a good way to go. So at the moment, it's being picked up. There's a lot of people with iPads, which is great. A lot of people doing work on it, which is a nice discovery as well. So I've got guests booked up until I think about September time.
Wow.
So when you think about that fortnightly, it's getting there. It's being picked up a lot, which is nice.
That's great. And so you said you have discussions with guests about iPads. What has been the use case that you've kind of heard and been like, I didn't realize people did that? Is there anything?
Oh, God, let's see. I think one of them was actually making a podcast, first of all, on an iPad,
Right.
which really surprised me. Because, I'm speaking to you from, a MacBook Air. I've got my iPad as a second screen for like notes and things, and the microphone's plugged into the air. And a few people, like our mutual friend Greg, like there's been like solo casts where he uses an app called Ferrite to record and edit the podcast on the iPad, and then uses the exported file using iCloud drive or files now to upload it to their their accounts, whether it's Libsyn or WordPress. And that really surprised me, because even though we're so far ahead with the iPad right now with iOS 11 and a little bit of iOS 12, you can't really do this kind of podcast right now on an iPad. You just can't. And even though like there's screen recording, which is great, it's still a way to go. But it surprised me, the fact that you can, using the USB adapter, the camera adapter on an iPad or iOS device, you can just plug a microphone in or your AirPods and just record away. So that's really the one thing that surprised me at the moment. That is it.
It's interesting because with apps like Anchor, that's becoming easier and easier to do. Recording at least a solo podcast on a phone is as simple as being on a one-sided phone conversation at this point. And I think Anchor has a lot of has to be credited for that, because the idea of podcasting was always supposed to be some random person with a microphone and an internet connection can start a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the same way that phones are great as cameras, because they're the cameras you always have on you, they're also the microphone you always have on you.
Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely. That's the thing with Anchor, because I did try doing like a pilot show with Anchor a few months ago, and it worked out okay. And it was great to edit it, don't get me wrong. And the update for the iPad the last couple of weeks was great. But it still kind of falls into that trap of you can't really do a Skype call and record with Anchor at the same time on an iPad.
Yeah.
So until Apple opens up that API, we're a bit stuck at the moment. But if you've got like a few people nearby that you record a podcast with and you should record it into a room, then, you are pretty much set. You really are. There's a lot of potential there. And I think Anchor are kind of leading the way at the moment. Apple can learn quite a bit from them, I reckon.
I know that Greg has his personal podcast set up via Anchor currently. Let me just double check my sources on that.
He's got a fair few.
Because hang on, where is
Check
it?
mine.
Pocket Casts. I believe it's run through Anchor. Yeah, it is, because it's got a little Anchor app in the bottom corner. And
Yes.
I guess it's a question more on podcasting as opposed to on tech.
Sure.
But what Anchor have done really well, and I think the downfall of a lot of companies that have tried to do the same thing, is that their podcasts do go out to general RSS feeds as well. You don't have
Yeah.
to use the Anchor app to download their podcasts.
Yeah.
And sure, doing it is great because not only do you get extra stuff, but you can also submit voicemails through the Anchor app. And that's actually really cool. I left one for Greg, and Greg, why haven't you replied? I remember doing it because it was like I was on my way home whilst listening to Greg's podcast, and I was like, oh, I have an interesting question to ask him. So I downloaded the Anchor app specifically to leave a voicemail, and then he never replied to it. I'm like, thanks, Greg.
Greg.
But I think the question broke him because he hasn't actually done an episode since.
That's just the end. He just set him off. That's it now. He's just taken to BYOD. No more. But yeah, it is a good app. I think another advantage with Anchor is the fact that it makes the podcast available in a lot more apps as well. For instance, Spotify. Mm-hmm. So, like the usual way is trying to fill in a form, and then you're in a queue for however long. And it's crazy because with Anchor, it does it automatically. So straight away after about maybe, I think, a month or so, a friend of mine's got a podcast back in Lincoln. And after about 6 weeks of setting his up, straight away it's on Spotify. So, if you've got a subscription or you've got a free account, you can go straight on, which is fantastic. So that's really one advantage of it. And especially when you've trying to get availability into like the Android phones as well, because it can be a bit difficult going into like Google. I think Google Play Podcasts now, or Google Podcasts. I think they did a rebrand, didn't they, last week or so?
So Google actually launched a proper podcast player called Google Podcasts, and it's not bad. I'll put it that way. Like, it's a great first attempt, and they've already pushed a couple of updates. What's the best way to describe this? It plays podcasts. That's basically it.
That's good. That's a start, at least.
So yeah, if you want to subscribe to and play a pod, it's really great for casuals. I'll put it that way. If you have a friend that you want to listen to a podcast you put out, what's really great about it is if they come across it on a web search, right? So if you go onto Google and just type in Snappy-Tech Podcast, there's a little play button next to each episode. So they can actually press the play button and it'll open it right up in the app.
Yeah.
So it's really great for casuals. The search function on it is very terrible, and it doesn't support, and it doesn't have any chapter support, which is why I use Pocket Casts primarily. But it's great for casuals, and anyone who's sort of more seriously into podcasts probably wouldn't use the Google Podcast app anyway. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, it's like you mentioned with Pocket Cast. I mean, that's on Android, iOS, and it's such a good app. It really is. I mean, I'm like using an iPhone, obviously, and I'm using Overcast, which is great because, it's got the chapter support straight away. It's got the custom album art as well. Whereas on iOS 12 with Apple Podcasts, they've only just introduced chapters and not album art. So it's a bit odd. And even the UI in Apple Podcasts is a bit flawed because it took me a while to try and find the chapters as well. So you have to scroll down and then go into a show more. Then it will actually show the chapters, which is I find odd. But yeah, it's still got a ways to go, I think. But Overcast is the one to go for, really. And then after that is Pocket Casts on iOS. But Android, absolutely Pocket Casts. I think it's the number one used, I believe.
As far as I'm aware, I don't know off the top of my head, but I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that influx of Android podcast listeners, due to that built-in app, will affect podcasts in the future. And because I think the number off the top of my head right now that's coming to mind is like 70% of podcast listeners use Apple Podcasts, which means
that sounds right. Yeah,
which means that if nothing else, at least 70% are on Apple devices.
Yeah, that's a scary thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and so hopefully we'll see a higher percentage of Android podcast listeners as well.
Yeah, that is the thing because even though we're like you've got the fanboys on either side going about how Apple's the most used and then Google's the most used. I mean, when you come down to it, there are more Android devices being used out there, because there's so many different ranges for Android, from like 50 quid all the way up to 700-800.
Yep.
So there's a lot of easy access for a podcast. There really is. But then again, when you've got, like, say with Apple, I mean, there's so many, and iOS can range to the HomePod, for instance. The podcast can go to the Apple TV even. So you're not even using an iOS device in a sense. You're using Apple TV.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of range there, really. And it also depends, like, with how a lot of people use their podcast app as well. Whether it's just on the commute, whether it's on a job that you can listen to podcasts, or if someone's working from home, they might just have it on their HomePod, perhaps again. Just listening away. So there's a lot of avenue there. There's a lot of potential. And I think especially with the Apple Podcast app coming to the Apple Watch soon, I think that's going to also open it up even more. I think it depends really with the Android side. Well, I mean, Android smartwatches aren't really the greatest thing at the moment, are they? So
it's interesting because I use mine primarily as a notification machine. I don't really do much more, and it works for me, I guess. I'm on like a 4. I think it's 4 years old, 4 years old, something like that. So because this came out just before the original Apple Watch.
Okay.
And I've been using it since then. And personally, like every time people are like, "Oh my God, Android Wear is the worst thing ever," or Wear OS as it's now called.
Yeah.
Whenever someone's like, "It's the worst thing ever," I'm just like, "Well, it works great for notifications, and that's pretty much all I use it for."
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, I don't remember what I paid for this, but I bought this secondhand off eBay, and I want to say it was like around £200. And
sounds about right.
Battery lasts like 2 days with an always-on display. So I haven't had this charged since yesterday. I only got home about an hour and a half ago, and I was out elsewhere last night. It's currently on 30%. And yeah, the thing for me though is the always-on display, which is like the biggest reason I dislike the Apple Watch. Just when I see one, I'm like, is that not annoying? Like, it's the weird wrist dance you have to do to get it to wake up more than anything. You have to be like, come on, I want the time.
Yeah, I've done that so many times outside, and I just get weird looks. It's just not right. But yeah, it's a strange thing because, I mean, I've had my Apple Watch since like the Series 0 now, since it first launched. And only like this last few months that the battery's gotten so much worse now. So I can just start wearing it at 7 a.m. And by the time it's, maybe 12 hours later, it's on like 10%, which never happened, before this year. So yeah, the battery is wearing down. But of course, with WatchOS 5 coming, it's not going to support my watch now. So that's kind of put me in a sticky position. Because when it first came out, I was of the opinion that when it came to, like newer models, that you kind of treat it like a watch shop in a sense, which I'm sure they still exist and do this, but still, where you bring in the watch to an Apple store and they will then, personally upgrade the watch, and they maybe put the latest chip in or something.
Yeah.
And straight away you'd have the latest features, but you still have the latest, your same watch in a sense, which is great. But not so with this, because now you have to go and sell it for maybe 10% of the price, because Apple prices, when you sell it, drops like a cliff. Mm-hmm. And then when you go into an Apple store, you're looking at the same watch for another £500-600, and then you kind of think to yourself, well, is it worth it? Have I got the most out of it the last few years? For me, I'd say yes and no, because I think, like yourself, I'm using it like a notifications machine as well. I'm using it to pay for goods in shops, and also the fitness, because I'm really addicted to those 3 rings now. I have to get 30 minutes.
Everyone regardless. I know with an Apple Watch is like those 3 rings. My life means nothing without 3 full rings.
Yeah, I no word of a lie. I've been out of, I think the calorie count was 550 out of 560, and I just skipped around my flat for about 10 minutes. It was ridiculous. If You've Been Framed was still on, I would have gotten the money and been on TV easily. But yeah, it's an interesting one, because already hinting about like the Series 4 watch that could be coming out in the fall with like a slightly bigger screen. And I'm still not sure where I want to upgrade. I really don't know. So I'm a bit torn at the moment. Maybe just use it as a notifications machine. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I still can't get over the fact that it's essentially a square as well. So it's like something about the shape of it just doesn't exude confidence.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, it did put me off at the beginning as well, because I have had like, I can't really say this anymore. Like circle watches. Let's go for that. I've had circle watches before. And when you go to like the oval shape of the Apple Watch, it is odd, but it makes sense from a UI perspective. But then I remember when I used to work at a certain phone shop, and I would demo the Android watches like the Moto 360, and you have like a certain part like cut off for the screen, and it was very odd. But yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, I can always see Apple doing it as well, because everyone for a watch especially, they like them in different sizes, different shapes. Like the straps have proven to be like really successful. Not keen on the names, but like Olive Branch or something. But anyway, but I think they do serve a purpose, and I think they're only now justifying themselves, especially for the fitness side as well. I think that's really helped too. Yeah, really.
I guess on real life current events, and while we're talking about technically Android, if we jump over to HTC, the reason I've got this in the show notes. So for anyone listening, HTC's sales year on year dropped almost 70%, which it has been doing recently. I think I think 68% is like the largest percentage, but it's been going down for like the last 11 consecutive quarters of financial loss. Oh, so this isn't a one-off. Let me put it that way. And so the reason I put this in here is because HTC just announced their U12 Plus last month. And HTC seem to have gotten themselves in a bit of a trap, because I would say that their last great phone would be the HTC... Oh, hang on, I forgot. What's it called? The M10? Yeah, the HTC M10, I would argue, was probably it was just called the HTC 10. I would argue that was probably their last great phone. Because
I'd agree.
It was very well built, and the M line had the M8 at least was also it's one of my favorite Android phones.
It was my work phone. Yeah, I loved it. I love the camera on it. It's great.
It was great. Yeah, somehow in the last 2 years, HTC have gone from pushing the envelope in ways you'd like, such as build quality and camera, to pushing the envelope in ways which just makes you go, what the hell are they doing? The reason I say this is because you know how the power and volume buttons on your phone are buttons?
Yes.
HTC decided, no, we want capacitive fake buttons, which then aren't very well glued to the device.
Where do I begin?
They're also completely non-replaceable. They're essentially permanently glued to the frame of the device, the internal electronics. And if the fake button falls off, you essentially need two contact points to bridge the connectors, because it doesn't work with your finger anymore.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's just great. I can't take myself seriously just talking about it. In good news, though, they made a transparent version.
Yes, they did. Every cloud. Oh my god. Goodness. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with HTC. I mean, just to make sure, this drop, what was it for HTC company as a whole, or just their phone department?
I'm pretty sure it was the company as a whole. Having said that, they did cut their workforce by 1,500 people 6 days ago. That being 22% of their entire employees.
Yeah, it's a strange thing with HTC. I mean, I remember when like the M9 was coming out, and then they had I think it was the M8 in red as well, ruby red, and it looked amazing. It really did. And I remember like the reps coming in and saying about, oh yeah, it's going to be like the I think the Beats speakers, which is really kind of throwing it back. So yeah, the Beat speakers inside, and like even the UI as well, like on the Android form, it was really good because at the time there was so much bloatware from other manufacturers with Android, whereas HTC did it really well. And I love like kind of even just like I'm a big typography fan, so just having them like with the right fonts and like the different ways and like say the headers, the buttons, and everything, really good. But somewhere along the way, it seems as though they just kind of grasping at straws now, and even with the HTC Vive, I mean that was such a good product, and when like they said they were going to partner with Valve, I mean that was just amazing, but they also did a smart thing for a PR perspective, because this was around the time where their sales were going to be, I think it was like the third quarter that they were dropping. And they said, like, oh yeah, with the HTC Vive, we're working really well with the Half-Life team. And then people went, what? Half-Life? And then straight away, Twitter just exploded. And they just thought, Half-Life, HTC Vive, VR, Half-Life 3, of course. It's coming. It's confirmed. HTC have confirmed it. And then I'm sure, I don't know whether this is a dream, but I saw kind of like the stock like climb a little bit back just because from that. And then suddenly HTC will seem relevant again because of that. But then straight away they had to correct themselves. And now you don't really hear about HTC Vive. It's more about Oculus, which is a strange thing because you think with Valve and Steam and Portal, all those games there, so much potential. I mean, just screaming at it. But there's been nothing. And because of that, they've also suffered on that end as well. So it's a strange thing with HTC. But no, I've seen the latest phone. I still try and keep on top of things. It's a decent one. This squeeze thing was unique. It was strange when you'd be seeing that in public. And then when I used to demo it as well, that was another thing. But yeah, it's I'm curious to see how it will go in the future. Because especially now with Android, everyone's trying to kind of make their mark with Android now, more so than ever, I feel. Sony is struggling, I think, because they don't seem to know.
Sony have made the mistake of releasing too many phones. They have a new flagship phone every 4 months, and it's just it's to the point where I just don't care anymore. And they all look the same. Like their latest flagship is called the Sony Xperia XZ2 Premium.
What a mess of a name! What an absolute mess! And then they just call it premium every year for some reason, which no one cares about. And they'll go, "It's got a 4K screen," and people just shrug like Alan Partridge. So, right? Okay.
And they've done that similar thing where they also had a couple great innovations, because whatever it was, the Sony Xperia whatever was the first phone with a 1080p display. And they were so they had these kind of meaningful steps, and then again somewhere along the way they just got lost, I guess. They have I was in a car phone warehouse yesterday, the day before, just looking at a bunch of random phones, and they've done the same thing with their power button, where it's just like a capacitor. It's like the home button on the iPhone. So it won't like fall off or anything, but it's on the side of the phone. So you like click it expecting a real button and don't feel anything. You're like, is this thing working?
So strange. Yeah, it's really odd because they don't seem to know like kind of what market they're aiming for. And especially the fact that a lot of their camera components goes to Apple as well. So surely they should be leading in that as well, in the camera department and Android. Whereas we're still seeing amazing pictures from like Huawei, the P20 Pro. I think OnePlus. Oh, there it is. Yes.
The photos on this thing are just ridiculous. Especially the evening photography. I'll go out during the night just to take photos, and I'm still amazed.
Yeah, absolutely. A few friends of mine are really tempted, like switching from their, I think, P10 to a P20. I'm like, just do it. I mean, with the camera, it's incredible. But yeah, that's another thing from Sony. I think they could do so much with the camera, and they're not. And even with, say, the PlayStation side, they did like a remote play with PlayStation, and it really hypes it up. And it seems to be falling by the wayside as well. Which is also strange and a missed opportunity, I reckon, because there's so much of their library you could have on a phone now. It's crazy. You could easily reformat like Little Big Planet, for instance, and put it on there and share and upload it for your PS4. So much potential, and it's an odd one. it's an odd
weird,
one.
And it's also meant that my only tablet as of this, because things change, is actually a Nintendo Switch. Because I have a PC for playing. I'm not gonna. Hey, mine's in grey as well. But I actually did a controller mod, so they're now clear, and they look awesome. Yeah, the clear plastic cost like £10 off eBay. It's really good.
Is that a purple clear, or is it just clear plastic?
I got clear, but you can get. I think it's called Atomic Purple or something. You can get that as well.
Yeah, reminds me of the Game Boy colors back in the day.
Yeah, and the see-through control. Like, I want all my tech to be see-through, to be completely honest. So those clear controllers, though infuriating to install, totally worth it.
I bet.
But yeah, so I have my PC for sort of most games, and then that Switch is great for out and about, traveling. I have Rocket League and FIFA on there, so I can play relatively heavy games, but it's primarily like Zelda and Super Mario Odyssey on there, and also Fallout Shelter. I don't know why I installed that, because I had it on my phone. Some part of me just went, I should start that again.
Yeah, I was the same. I couldn't believe I had it on the iPad first, had it on the Switch, and just no. So I get like nervous twitches and go, I must see how their bottling plant is going on. I must go. It's just ridiculous. But I've been playing like Crash like last week, so it's probably just on fire now, and I'm just leaving them to it. So good to them.
The crazy thing is, like, unlike on a phone, where if you lock the phone, I think it pauses the game. It takes a minute for it to realize you've put the Switch to sleep. So if you leave it for 5 minutes, you come back and everything is depleted. I'm like, what the hell has happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I've gotten into the habit of quitting the app every time I've finished playing, just so I don't lose a bunch of resources.
That is a good shout. Yeah, but I tell you what, with the Switch, I've got Crash playing now. If you can see that, that's on. Oh yeah, and just the fact that that's a game that I used to play when I was 8, 9 years old. I'm now playing that on a Nintendo switching system. We could
That's the little known German version of a Nintendo Switch.
Only one made, and it's mine. But it's the fact that I'm playing Crash Bandicoot 3 on a Switch, handheld on the train, and then I can continue it on my TV behind me, and it's just mental. And you just can't help but think Sony could have done that, ideally with their Android tablets. And but I know that we did do a little bit of it because they brought out an Xperia Play, I remember.
Yes.
It looked like a PSP Go in a sense. And
it was a phone with a fold-out gamepad, essentially.
Yeah, and that's also kind of just been forgotten about, which I find odd because, people are trying to have games work on a touchscreen phone still. And the fact that they had something like that on Xperia Play, it was just asking to have all the games on it and stuff, and it wasn't. But the fact that, I can be on the iPad doing work and then switch to the Nintendo Switch and play Crash. It's great.
They should call it that, the Switch. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think that name might work.
I'll talk to Reggie. He'll be fine. But yeah, I'm totally amazed by it, and yeah, I'm curious to see how Sony will do it with their console. Because I had a guy on the podcast a few weeks ago, and Chris Scullion, and he said an interesting point how Sony are kind of in the arrogant stage of going, well, here's the stuff, and here's what we think will be good for you. And you kind of saw that at the E3 conference, because it was such a weird conference, because they switched from the conference itself and then people talking outside on a bench, almost like Question Time or GMTV or Good Morning Britain. And it was very odd. And a couple of the games that were announced, you kind of saw them before. And it was a lot of horror for some reason, which I didn't get. But yeah, very odd. Very odd.
They're also in this weird position where the Xbox is kind of cannibalizing itself, because there's the Xbox and then there are people who play on PC, and because of Windows Universal Apps, or whatever they're called, I think they're called Universal Universal Windows Apps, that's what they're called. Because of that, there are no Xbox exclusive games. Any game that comes out on Xbox also comes out on PC. So I, as someone potentially buying a console, I went for the Switch because I wanted it to be able to take it anywhere I go. But if I didn't have a PC I gamed on, I'd probably go for a PS4 purely because there are exclusives. For me, buying an Xbox has no point, because if I want to play an Xbox game, I do it on my PC instead.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm on a MacBook, and I can switch, to a Windows like system using Boot Camp, so you can boot into that. But it's known universally that Macs and MacBooks aren't really the most powerful for PC games in the last 18 months, really. So that is the thing. I was tempted with the Xbox because of their backwards compatibility, because they are just nailing it in that regard, compared to PS4, which is just an odd one, but I'll come back to that. But it's the fact that you can play, Banjo-Kazooie on it, Ninja Gaiden Black on the original Xbox, but you can still use all the Xbox One features, which I think is incredible. And, they're still supporting, more of those games every month, it seems. And whereas on the PS4, it's just nothing. You've got a PS2 emulator on a few games, but a lot of it seems to be more Rockstar games than anything, which is okay, I guess. But I want to see Tekken 4 or Tekken Tag on the system, or thrown out there maybe Final Fantasy 8 perhaps on the PS4. That'd be brilliant, but I can't. But it is a weird thing. I mean, with the PS4, I'm happy with. Like you say, it's got some great exclusives. God of War, Uncharted, Last of Us. Second one coming. So there's a lot there which has got it in its favor, but I think unless they try and listen to the fans again and try and bring back what made people go to the PlayStation in the beginning with their original games, I think there's a lot they could gain from that.
It's also the prevention of crossplay is something I found hilarious, because I can't think of that without thinking of back when the Xbox One was announced. Sony were in this position where they'd intentionally delayed their announcement for the day after the Microsoft one, because that way they were able to hear what they said and kind of come up with a comeback. And I specifically remember a thing they released from E3 was a video. It was a 1-minute tutorial video on how to share a game with a friend. It was 45 seconds of intro music, and then one guy passes the game to his friend. He's like, and there you go.
It was so good. I mean, they did it so well that year, because they didn't really do anything when you think about it. They didn't really bring anything new. It was just keeping what was already there. But the PR spin they did on it was incredible. It really was. And Xbox kind of just, walked into a wall in a sense. I remember one of their previous bosses on Xbox, they did an interview with Game Trailers, I believe. And he was just getting just caned with the fact that, so if people want to borrow games and things or play their older games, they just go on a Xbox 360. And he's like, yes, no, maybe, I don't know, I'll come back. So no. But I think now we're slowly seeing the other side of the coin being turned now, because we've seen Microsoft now doing it so well for the fans. Some of the games that people are asking for, like Gears 5 for instance, that's an exclusive and it'll be on PC. But PlayStation, I mean, you got Last of Us, you got Spider-Man, you can play movies in 4K, but not games in 4K on the Pro, which is just
that is really bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. And then, like you say, the crossplay, which is all they've said from that is we are looking at it, which is like, really?
Yeah,
okay.
That was. Well, I feel like I saw a updated thing to do specifically with Fortnite.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It's
yeah, they said we are looking at the possibilities. It's like, no, all you have to do is literally flip a switch. Like, it's not like, you know, Xbox and Nintendo went in and like did a bunch of like behind the scenes work. They just like hit the button that was like allow anyone to play.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it couldn't be like any more easier because it all runs off the same engine, the same servers. Everyone gets the same like items and loot and whatever. So there is nothing stopping Sony from doing this, as far as I'm concerned. From a business perspective, we're seeing a car crash in motion. From a PR perspective, it's crazy, and it'll make people kind of think again about, well, if I'm going to get a PS4, and this game comes out, am I going to be playing the same character on my Switch or my PC? Is it going to work? So unfortunately, they've laid the seeds of doubt there, which is only to their detriment, really, and it's a shame.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning, Fortnite being... Oh, I should have put the word Fortnite in the title. We'd have so many views right now.
Yeah.
When Fortnite was first launched on console, they'd accidentally forgotten to distinguish between PS4 and Xbox One players. So they'd accidentally enabled cross-platform play. So they actually had to go in and put in a hot fix to prevent that from happening. And the only reason people noticed is because Xbox allows spaces in names and PS4 doesn't, or the other way around. I don't know which way around that is. But like someone saw a space and was like, oh my god, this person can't be playing on my console. And then Epic released a statement saying it was a configuration issue.
Oh, okay, of course it is. Yeah, it's just mad. But that's the thing, because we're in an age where everyone is using their devices in their own way, but they want to play with people that they know. And people know that in this day and age, there's so many, routes to access your games or music or anything now. And when a company like Sony goes, nope, we're not having that, we're going to look at it from a business perspective, you just think, I'm not going to buy your products then. I'm going to move on to someone else who does care about what this is going on. So that's the thing. And the E3, like I say, was just bizarre. That's the only way I can describe it. Very bizarre, and such a difference from a few years ago. So unless they do something at I think it's still going on, the Tokyo Game Show in a couple of months' time, they announce stuff, or Eurocom, I think, one of those. Interesting to see if they announce any more games or something. Yeah, it's a very odd time, very odd time for Sony.
And I guess I'm really on point with these segues today. I guess on the subject of odd, the note for this isn't specific to this story, but I think is an interesting discussion point, which is that Elon Musk managed to turn a story that would have been worth covering had this not been a technology podcast into a story that is worth covering, even though we're part of a technology podcast. Because Elon Musk, in just out of nowhere, really, as far as I'm concerned, he just appeared. I think what happened was Elon Musk was like scrolling through the news one day. I was like, oh, this is something I can do something about, and just rocked up.
Yeah, here I am, like John Wayne. Just here we go.
in the most Tony Stark move he could have made. He promised to send a bunch of SpaceX and Boring Company engineers to Thailand to help with the rescue of the soccer team stuck in a cave in Thailand. I'm pretty sure that rescue effort is currently ongoing.
Yeah. From what I've seen, they've rescued a few kids, but I think they're going to try again. I'm actually just checking the website now. 4 boys rescued. but the rest must wait. But they say it's running smoothly. But nothing about Elon Musk, it seems. No, nothing about flamethrowers or anything there.
No, what was hilarious is he had a very what I would deem a very Elon Musk way approach of like he said he was going to build miniature personal submarines.
Yeah,
and the idea was like to get them in personalized submarines to get out. I'm like, oh, that's very Elon Musk of you.
Yeah. I'm sure I read something like he was trying to figure out a way to make an inflatable tunnel as well, so he could just climb out.
He wanted to pump the tunnel with air, so that the air would push the water out, essentially. Which again is great in theory, but requires a lot of air and to actually get the pipe down there in the first place.
Yeah, we haven't heard much about that tunnel since, so I don't know what he's doing now.
It was just hilarious. I couldn't help but laugh.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. It really is. Yeah, it's very odd. I mean, but that's the thing, like, because even now, like, technologies, helping us in that way. Whereas it's like the Apple Watch doing an emergency call when someone's been, buried alive. I remember seeing a few weeks ago, and there was a car crash actually, tipped over somewhere in America, and he was able to use his Apple Watch cellular model to phone the emergency services and his parents as well, which is brilliant, So it's great that we're in that age now where technology is at a form where it can help us so much like that. With Elon Musk, I mean, the ideas he gives is perfectly great, and I'm sure it'll work out, but I haven't really seen him there, whether it's a PR exercise in the many extreme way, I don't know, but it's a great thing. It really is. I just want my flying car though from Tesla. That's really all I want. All the roads.
I feel like most people want a car from Tesla right now. They need to get to making those first.
That's a fair point. Yeah. A car would be great right now.
They have said on, I guess this is related news. They have said, I think it was last week or the week before, there was an internal memo that was released that they made 500 Model 3s in a week for the first time. And it turns out the reason for all the delays was there was a angry employee who was frustrated that he didn't get a promotion. I assume it's a he, because it sounds like a very petty thing to do, and I can only imagine guys doing it. I like to think that most people would have a lot more class than whoever this person was. So this person just started setting fires in the factory. Because the factory caught fire like 3 times in the last year, which is what caused all the delays. And so it took Elon Musk a year to go, oh, maybe it's the guy we didn't give a promotion to.
Oh, there's no words there. That's just crazy. Yeah. It's good that they're finally producing these Teslas, and it's great. And I think the Roadster as well that he announced, that looks amazing. But yeah, until they actually gain a rhythm and try and produce these cars up to the point where people can just test drive them, that'd be great. But we're coming up to about a couple of years now with this Tesla 3 model, and it's getting into kind of like the ridiculous territory where people have put money down and deposits and huge sums of money for it, and they're just not getting anything. They're still driving their Reliant Robins or Vauxhall Victorys.
I like to hope every Tesla buyer is driving a Reliant Robin.
That'd be amazing. Unless it's like Tesla's next model.
I'd find it hilarious if that was like Elon Musk's sense of humor of just going, hey, thanks for pre-ordering. While you wait, here's a Reliant Robin.
Just a Tesla light sticker just on there. Yeah.
It's the Tesla equivalent of like a courtesy car from your insurance. It's like, while you wait, here's a Reliant Robin. It's like the logo is only half peeled off. Like, when you go to peel something off and it like tears, like that's happened, and they've just stuck the Tesla logo on top regardless.
Yeah, and just try and make it like a bit techie as well. They've like stuck like an old iPad 1 model in the dashboard with iOS 4 on it. Just, there you go. Enjoy. Oh my god. Yeah. But yeah, it's I drive and it's great, but I'm not really keen on actually driving around the UK at all, and so a Tesla doesn't really appeal to me. But like I say, if they start making hoverboards, then I will be first in line for it. by all means, because I think they've probably got the most chance of making one at the moment.
Yeah, we'll see. There was I forget who it was. Someone made a hoverboard for some ad, but like you needed a special surface, like it worked specifically on one kind of surface, which is great. Except you have to like resurface the entirety of the Earth now for it to actually work.
Yeah. So like, unless like the whole pavement is like filled with magnets, then great, you can use a hoverboard.
It was essentially a personalized maglev train.
Yeah. Yeah, so strange. But yeah, I mean, Back to the Future is one of my favorite films. So until I can get that hoverboard working, I'll wait.
I guess continuing on the vein of news that wasn't really news until someone else stepped. Actually, before we jump over to this, I guess we should answer the question. Does Elon Musk doing something and make that thing instantly newsworthy? Like, just by association? If Elon Musk was to, I don't know, get bored one day and decide to buy a car, which actually no, he has a car company. If he was to decide to buy a designer coat, right? I feel like it's safe to say that news begets news. Like, noteworthy people just get covered because they're noteworthy.
Yeah.
Is Elon Musk at that point where whatever he does gets covered because he's the one doing it?
Yeah, I reckon so. Yeah, he'll get a coat. He'll then buy a bagel on the way, and then people put those two together and think he's making some kind of bagel coat. What can we do here? So, and he'll just do a tweet of where it's a coat that makes bagels with cream cheese on and just fires it like a frisbee to people.
Oh no, better still, like you click, Project Jacquard by Google, where like the touch jean fabric stuff. You press your coat and it like produces a bagel. So like at any point of the day, you're like, oh, I would really like a bagel right now. You like touch it and out comes your bagel.
Yeah, it just rises. Great. Be amazing. Yeah. If Musk is listening to this now, please do it.
Yeah, we're waiting for our bagel jackets.
Oh yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah, I think anything is newsworthy when he's involved right now. Just kind of like Trump with the politics. If he just tweets something about anything, it's news. You see it on BBC News. So feeling that Musk is going to do it, you're going to see it on The Verge, certain blog sites, certain podcasts. You're just going to hear about it. But yeah, that is an avenue that I'm trying to get into with podcasts because I think it's interesting just how there's been such a sudden leap in the cars with Elon Musk and smart cars as well now. So I'm currently trying to find a few podcasts that kind of like are just dedicated to it. Maybe for someone who owns one as well, that'd be good to know. But yeah, interesting avenue in the next couple of years, I reckon, especially if Apple do their own car as well, or Google.
I want to stay on the Donald Trump topic for just a second. I don't want to stay on it too long because nothing good comes of paying attention to Donald Trump for more than like 30 seconds at a time.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
But I think the reason the news is so into him is because the public are so like it's like a car crash that you can't quite look away from. Like I've just gone onto his Twitter and just scrolling through it is hilarious.
Oh, it's mad. It just doesn't make any sense at all. It really doesn't. I don't know what happens. There's a few Netflix programs of him, and it says about how we kind of got the idea of it from a certain governor in 1998, and instead of just using social media, he was using like the news channels, local news channels at the time. And since then, he kind of got the idea of like if you just say anything, it suddenly becomes news because of the position you're in.
Yeah.
And now he's the president, which still doesn't make sense or ring true to me in any form. When it says President Trump on BBC News, I'm like, that's not true. And it is.
It's like you're telling me this guy has the same level of notoriety as all of the other presidents.
Yeah. He's standing toe to toe with Obama and Clinton. I'm like, oh god, right, okay. So yeah, but I do think that without him, we wouldn't be seeing Twitter right now. It would have disappeared a long time ago, really. Because I think he is the one who's just making it as a life support machine. Without it, I'm not really sure how Twitter could survive, really, unless they try and make the ads more relevant.
For me, Twitter is is one of those things where the concept of Twitter will always be around, even if it isn't Twitter itself. And I guess what's it called? Wait, I know this. I haven't used my account in so long. I forgot my name. Mastodon, is that the name of it? They were like Twitter 2.0. Yeah, Mastodon.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's good.
So I think something like that would have been, had Twitter died, there would be like a Twitter 2.0 essentially. And the thing with Mastodon is it's not designed to make money. It's just an open source piece of whatever.
That's it, yeah.
Because I think realistically, a company like Twitter just won't make money. But it's the kind of thing that won't go away. So it either has to belong to Google, who don't really care. I mean, look at Google Plus. Or it has to be open source and not trying to be monetized.
Yeah.
And in what I can only describe as the best segue I'll ever make on this show, there is a great Donald Trump tweet where he talks about, and I'm quoting him right here, Twitter is getting rid of fake accounts at a record pace. Which really nicely segues into our article of Twitter is deleting roughly 1 million accounts a day.
I don't think that's true in any way. 1 million accounts. I mean, I go on it like now and again, and of course with Twitter, there's a lot of World Cup tweets. Would you believe?
World Cup? Is this just a really large cup? Is that what it is? Like,
I think it's the World Mug. Yes, it's a lovely mug. People are loving it. It's coming home apparently. I don't know which home it's going to, but I wish them well in their home.
On a quick side note, sorry, really quickly, I just want to point out, how can you invent a sport yet only win the main competition once? That's all I'm saying. Carry on.
Yeah. A total fair point. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I joined Twitter in 2009 even, it was great. I mean, I kind of like came across actually when I used to use the app Tweety, a third party Twitter app, and it was great. And you would have like maybe a tweet every 5 minutes and stuff, and that was it. And then you'd have people who would, because they wanted the news on Twitter, would you believe? So they tried to get an RSS news feed into a Twitter account, and then you could see it. I'm like, oh wow, I can actually see BBC News articles and breaking news on Twitter. And now it's just like a common thing now. But we're at a point where we've got to like mute a lot of accounts and a lot of words and try and ignore a lot of the noise as well, because you can get really like mentally affected by it.
Yeah.
Especially if because I've just decided the past month I'm going to do full-time freelance writing and the podcasting, and when I'm seeing like tweets like just going, oh yeah, I've got this writer's job and it's great, and I'm here now and look at me at this event, and for some people, I mean not me, but some people, it will dampen their their enthusiasm and encouragement, and think, well, if they're doing that on Twitter and they got all their thousands of followers, then how have I got a hope in this? And at the end of the day, you do have a hope. You just got to do it, and you just got to like kind of block out that noise. The noise has always been there. You're just watching it now on a smartphone or a smart device. That's the only difference now in 2018.
But the noise now follows you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've just got to, by all means, look at the noise, but don't read into it, and just focus on you and just go. Just don't get any distractions. That's my helpful hint for the day of life. So if you want any more, you can join me on Twitter.
If you want to hear about how you shouldn't use Twitter, follow Daryl on Twitter.
At Daryl Baxter. Enjoy. But no, it's. I mean, I've unfollowed a lot of accounts, not 1 million accounts, but a few where a lot of people. How can I put this without people like a lot of drama out there, and I think sometimes you just got to mute the noise and just focus on what you're going to be doing. If you enjoy it, just go for it. It doesn't matter. If there's 3 people, 4 people listening or watching to whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. It's more than 0 at the end of the day. And if you're enjoying it as well and no one's listening to it or reading it, who cares? If you're happy with it, go for it. So that's kind of the thing with Twitter at the moment. It's a good RSS feed for news, and there's a lot of people we can connect with. I mean, we did with Twitter anyway. So it's a very big double-edged sword, really. Kind of Darth Maul double-edged lightsaber, really, in a sense, because it can help you, but it can also really hinder you as well. You just got to try and balance it.
And I think the thing that people forget, and I did a Instagram post about this a while ago, because Instagram is probably my least used social media.
Okay.
Purely because I don't take enough photos I deem to be share-worthy. Because I'm usually making videos, and I've actually gotten onto the IGTV hype train. So I'm doing some dedicated content for that. But that is very much been like 90-second to 2-minute like quick shows, as opposed to that like 15-minute YouTube video of this. This podcast has gone up to 2 hours before. So it's more like quicker content for the kids of Instagram, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I did this post where when I initially re-announced myself on Instagram, because I'd had the account since when? Let me double check this. Since 2014, the start of 2014, but I hadn't posted anything. And so when I actually went to start using my Instagram account properly, I mentioned that it was like a place for a collection of highlights. And it kind of dawned on me that, wait a second, people forget that is what social media is. Like, social media is just a collection of highlights, as though your life is like one peak to the next. Like, it's only ever going up. And that's not how life works.
No, it's not. No, that's the thing, because I think a lot of the users here grew up with a lot of the reality TV in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. So just watching that, every evening after school, it kind of like got them in the mentality of, oh, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And now with social media, from say Periscope, and there's another live app, the name eludes me, but you've got Instagram, Snapchat, which I don't really use anymore, that dropped off a cliff after the bad UI change, and Facebook, and the quotes and the sunset quotes in Facebook, which I've seen so much of, and I've muted. There's a lot of self-importance which shouldn't be there, but I think, and I could be wrong on this, but hopefully it's true, that people kind of like come around to the fact that a lot of things don't matter. A lot of the news and the statuses don't really matter at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm all I use really now is Twitter and Instagram, and then a little bit of Facebook, just to kind of like catch up on maybe a bits of family and a few friends who don't use any other social media. But that's it, because I don't have the app installed, especially on the iPad. I just go to the website itself.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you see that F and then you see that notification bubble of 1, then straight away it pulls you back in. So I think we're growing out of that trend now from early 2000 of Big Brother and, I'm a celebrity and things. But I think it's going to take a few more years yet. But I think it's a start at least.
I've been using, for Facebook on my phone, I do have the app, but I don't have the standard Facebook app. I'm not sure if this is available on iOS, but there's like a Facebook Lite and a Facebook Messenger Lite. And so the regular Facebook app is like 300 megabytes, 400 megabytes, so some ridiculous number. Yeah. Whereas the Lite version of the apps is like 15 megabytes. And so it gets rid of all the completely random bloat that I don't want, because I want the experience of basically scrolling through the website. Because if you like go into the other services on Facebook, it does so much stuff that no one ever really uses. And we had a discussion about this on the podcast a while ago, how these companies aren't happy with being the thing they do. Facebook isn't happy with just being social media, so they now have like reviews on restaurants, and they also do location sharing, and they also do whatever random feature. So the stock Facebook app is 80 megabytes, and the Facebook Lite app is it won't tell me because it's installed. Let me check. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's available on iOS, but the original app, the regular Facebook app, is 80 megabytes. Facebook Lite is 2 megabytes.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it's like, it's essentially a glorified web wrapper. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
But that's fine. Like, you still get access to, like, it still has like the stories along the top.
Okay.
Which I hate just as a concept, but there's nothing I can do. And they're also completely adless by complete coincidence. Well, not completely adless, but they're not as chock full of ads as like the regular version.
Yeah.
And the Facebook Messenger Lite has no ads, which is really great. And that's even smaller still. I think that's like 1.5 megabytes or something.
Wow.
My only disappointment being it doesn't give me chat heads, which is like my favorite thing about Android messaging, which is probably the biggest reason I don't see myself switching to iOS.
Okay.
That, and I guess the general openness, and keyboards actually, and I'll come back to a rant on this in a second.
Yeah, go for it.
But if I installed Messenger for a completely unrelated reason earlier, so if I open up a chat head real quick, chat heads, for those who don't know, is this thing right here. The idea of having like this little bubble that follows you regardless of where you are, so that you can message people. And it is, for me at least, like, it's the best thing when it comes to messaging, because if I'm messaging someone, I don't want to have to go into that app.
True.
For the longest time, I actually used Facebook Messenger as my SMS app. Like, I'd send text messages via the Facebook Messenger app purely because it had chat heads.
Okay.
Because you can set different default SMS apps, and Facebook has offered that. So the chat heads were something I really loved. And then SMS messed up, so I decided I was going to use just the standard Android messages, because it also has web support and stuff.
Sure.
But chat heads are probably the biggest reason that every time I see an iOS device, I'm like, oh, if only. And I'm also not using iOS apps out of spite at this point, because everyone else in this household has an iOS device.
Oh, good.
Yet somehow there's only ever one lightning cable. So the fact that my phone uses USB-C means that I never have to argue with anyone about my charge cables, and that on its own is good enough for me.
That's fair. Yeah, that is totally fair. Yeah, I mean, there are adapters, but yeah, it's. I mean, I agree with, like, say, how iOS. It's, I've never been, that kind of fanboy where, oh, you must like this certain product because it's great, and if you don't like it, then get out. I've never been like that. With consoles, certain games, Blur and Oasis, iOS and Android. I've liked it all. I don't mind. It sounds like a cop-out answer, but it's really the case, because what is the problem in just liking what everything that's out there, and because you generally do as well. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sony have stumbled. Microsoft have stumbled. Nintendo have. I mean, I'd love for Nintendo to have a UI refresh or the eShop refresh, so you can have like more tailored, recommendations when you buy things. It'd be amazing. But everyone has their faults. At the end of the day, no one's perfect. I mean, I want to see better keyboard support on the iPad. I'd love to be able to play a game on the iPad keyboard on my smart keyboard case. But now I still have to, go to the screen and play, Tomb Raider 2 with all those controls when I've got a keyboard right below it. It doesn't make any sense to me, And even going back to our point in the beginning, I'd love to do a podcast on the iPad, but I can't at all, because they haven't got the API available to anyone. So it's frustrating. And I'd love a dark mode on iOS, but there isn't one. But there is a macOS soon. So that's just bizarre as well. So yeah, everyone's got the faults. Everyone has. But I have a spare lightning cable though, if they want one. So.
I'll let them know. It just amazes me, because like our house is littered with Apple boxes, because we have 2 iPads, 3 iPhones, And then there's like an old, like this box that you can see right there. That white box is for an iPhone 5S. But it's used like as a spare phone. Because everyone who owns an Apple phone in this household is also with a locked Apple phone. We tend to travel a lot, which means that whenever we travel, we have to resort to the iPhone 5S. So,
oh wow.
And going from iPhone 10 to iPhone 5S isn't the most graceful or dignified of journeys.
No, I bet. Oh, I bet. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of nostalgia that's coming up now for older devices as well. Because in my bag, I've got an old iPod video edition, and I love it. It's so good. I wish I could use my AirPods with it, but at the moment I can't. But there's people I've seen on Twitter who are like buying like old, iMac, the original iMacs from '98, and just seeing how things work. Or people are like going back to the like original MacBook Pros or PowerBooks as they used to be known as before the Intel switch. And even now I'm seeing there's a YouTuber, a game guy, I think it's Metal Jesus Rocks, and it has a video of him for 20 minutes building a Windows 98 machine and just like inserting like a Voodoo FX card and just seeing how Quake works on it. It's just amazing. But I love that kind of thing, just to see, because if you got like Quake 2 struggling in 2018, it's such a weird thing, but I love it. But yeah, nostalgia is definitely a massive thing in this day and age, and I think it's going to grow even more, especially with the computers and the laptops and the tablets soon. So yeah, really interesting.
I have this is a question for you, because as a non-iOS user, I don't know if this is just my parents being like my parents, or this is a genuine iOS issue. And this is to do with keyboards. So I am bilingual, as are my parents. My parents were born and raised in Georgia and then moved over to the UK roughly 20 years ago, which is where I was born and raised. But I also speak...
That's a Fresh Prince song.
So just to give you context, when I want to switch languages on my keyboard, I use SwiftKey, right? So what I do is I like grab the space bar R, swipe it to the right, completely different keyboard, all is well. Want to change to English, swipe back, all is well. If I want to use emoji, there's like this really nice dedicated emoji button. I click it, there are all my latest used emojis. My question is, I don't know if this is a remnant from before iOS officially supported keyboards. Back when I remember this being like the hackiest thing, where you'd have to install an app that would replace a language it actually supported to put in a different keyboard for a language that the iOS didn't actually support at the time. And so whenever like my parents go from typing something in English to typing something in Georgian, they like have to cycle through like 4 different keyboards, and they're all like a different keyboard app. And for some reason, emoji is its own keyboard. Like, it's not just a dedicated button. And it just, every time I see it, it confuses me.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Because they brought out the keyboards in iOS 8, so about 4 years ago. And that was a massive thing. I mean, admittedly, I'm still using the original keyboard. But yeah, I totally get it. Because even now, it's so difficult to try and switch between, different keyboards. And even on I think on the messages on an iPad, when you're trying to switch between like the stickers and the GIFs and things, it's so difficult. You just can't switch between them well. And in like version 12, it's made it even worse, I feel, because now there's 2 separate buttons to either reach the camera app or another one that you've got to find to go to your gallery as well, which I just find odd. Very, very odd. So, yeah.
It's bizarre. I actually remember that iOS 8 announcement very vividly, because I distinctly remember I forget who it was presenting it. Who would have been presenting the iOS 8 thing?
Probably Craig Federici.
Probably. Because I remember them inviting out the CEO of SwiftKey. Like, that was the guy who was like supposed to be like, So whoever it was like, oh, we're as iOS is operating system that's on the cutting edge, and part of being on the cutting edge is that we now support software keyboards. Like, you can have a custom software keyboard. I just remember the CEO of SwiftKey coming on, and his first line was, so the reason we're so good at software keyboards is because we've done them on Android for years.
Yeah, I remember that. Just like, oh, okay, moving on. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there are like some defenders out there which go, oh yeah, but Apple like trying to take the time and make sure they do stuff right. Now, to a point, I agree, but there are times like the keyboards that you just go, why couldn't they have just brought that out in an earlier version? I get the security, but surely they're a multi-billion company. They can surely find out a way, either midway through the release cycle, or just for an iPhone release, much quicker than what they did. Yeah, it is strange with Apple, but sometimes they hold back features where you just think, why isn't it here yet? I mean, the multitasking with iPad. I remember like people were just raging before the last WWDC, before they announced version 11.
Yeah.
Saying we want to get improvements to the iPad because right now it is seeing like it's getting left by the wayside and it's just becoming like an enlarged iPhone OS, essentially. That's all it is. So we want to see some improvements. And then, they actually made a dedicated section to the announcement of, there's a dock, you can, like do like better multitasking features now. It's all unified. And, it's like brilliant, fantastic. Then again, this year, there's nothing with the iPad in the software wise. Because I think they're waiting for next year now, which is a shame. But yeah, Apple likes to drag their heels now and again. But when they do have those features announced, sometimes you think, okay, it was worth the wait. Like macOS Mojave with their dark mode, it looks good.
Yeah, it does. And dark mode is something that I use on the majority of Android apps. I have support it, and the way they support them and the way I use them, and Huawei has it built into their skin as well now, which is really good. Is it's automatic to do with sunset and sunrise times, because that's the time it most makes sense to go in and out of dark mode. Like if I set it to 8 p.m. every day, then sometimes it'll be like, today, right? It's still light out at 8 p.m. Or it will get to 8 p.m. and it's been dark for a couple of hours because we're in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
And I think the what's it called, nightlight on Windows? Yeah. So the whole like redshift thing, being to do with sunset, sunrise as well, is just great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then actually the one sticking point, and I think the one time Apple introduced something and it wasn't too late, I'd say it wasn't required at all. Yet somehow this is a feature that like I've heard people raving about, but I haven't seen anyone use. So right. I'm going to need your feedback on this, and I think Greg said he uses it. It's Force Touch.
Oh, okay, right.
It's because here's the thing, right? On Android, it's just like a press and hold, and it does like exactly the same stuff. Because I know, because every time I listen to, like whenever it's brought up, he brings up the Huawei Mate S, where Huawei tried to do that same thing, and you could like weigh something up to like 100 grams or something. And I will concede that was completely ridiculous. But I won't concede the fact that the need for Force Touch at all was ridiculous. It's like, just build that into a tap and hold.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when it was announced for the 6S, I was involved with the store to, like help launch it and demo its latest features. So when they were queuing outside, and they still queue outside for an iPhone launch, it's crazy. I would demo the 6S and go, oh, look at this. You can now lightly press on a photo in Photos app. And then when you press it even more, the photo then pops. And they did that demo with Peak Pop and Show, something like that, in the advertising. And like now, I don't see it used. I use it now and again. If I want to go into WhatsApp and there's maybe a message I just want to quickly read, and I have to use it when I'm trying to switch between the audio on my iPhone and the AirPods, because sometimes it doesn't pick it up. So I have to go into the widgets on the control center,
Right.
force press the play bit, and then go to AirPods. So I use it now and again, and the shortcuts on the settings is great. But like you say, they can just do a long press, and the same result will happen. And it looks like with this rumored iPhone line in September, it seems as though one of them is not going to have Force Touch. It's going to have press and hold, which is already hinted at in 12, because there's a way where I can see if I can try and demo it on here. So it turns the keyboard into a trackpad.
Right.
So let's just see. This probably won't work, but I'll try. So say if you want to get to a certain cursor, you just force press it.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas now in the latest beta, you just hold down the space bar and the same effect happens, which hasn't happened before. Which tells me that, oh, okay, it looks like it's going to happen then for the latest iPhone. So yeah, they should have done more with that, really. And unfortunately, a lot of it was down to them, because it has been, 3 years. There's been a few iPhone launches, a few more software releases. They could have done more. And people forget it's still in the MacBooks. It's in that trackpad on the MacBook Pros, but it's not used. They didn't mention it once. I don't think they ever have, really, apart from when they introduced the new MacBook Pros. So yeah, I think it's the feature that we're going to see much less of in September. Absolutely. And I don't think it'll ever come to the iPad. If it does, I'll eat a hat, and I don't care what hat.
Because it's for me at least, it was more the impact it had on repairability. Like, if you want to put in a pointless feature, go for it, be my guest. But when I then want to replace my phone screen, and they're like, no, you have to calibrate Force Touch. Like, is there an option to just turn Force Touch off?
Yeah, that's the thing. And actually, it reminds me, because that was a point of having the haptic engine from the Apple Watch put into the iPhone. And that's when they said, oh, because of this, we can now expand it to use Force Touch. But with that, the only thing that's really kind of been made more use of is when you get notifications, but it's more customized, because that haptic engine is really good. I have to say, it's something that I notice all the time. So I think it was kind of like it was a knock-on effect of having a haptic engine chip inside the iPhone. So you had that. So I think that thing will stay inside the iPhone, but the Force Touch itself, the interaction will go away. So yeah, it is a weird one. But yeah, I can see that going soon. Absolutely.
It makes zero sense. It didn't make any sense to me at the time. It doesn't make any sense to me now. No. Huawei were actually the first company to ever send me a review unit for a phone. And it was the Huawei Mate S with the Force Touch. And I remember getting it and being like, why? Just why? that was my only question. It was, A, who would use it? And B, why would you use it? Because even the measuring app, which lets you measure up to 100, I remember using that once, just to be able to laugh at myself for doing it, right? I put a couple of grapes on my phone. I was like, oh, look at me, I know the weight of 2 grapes. What a great feature! And then ate the grapes.
Why? It doesn't make any sense. No. That's the thing. A lot of manufacturers, like we said with Sony, they're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, and that is not something that's stuck. It's just been holding on to the wall because of haptic engine and notifications, and that's it. Nothing else. So yeah.
I will say, congratulations to Apple for finally fixing their notifications on that subject. On the lock screen. iOS notifications are currently, at least, the weirdest thing I've ever had to look at. Because this is my current notification pane. If I pull this down, you'll see there's currently 1 notification. And even that is just Google has a semi-persistent notification that pops up frequently about weather, or if there's anything current happening that I should know about. But this is what my notifications usually look like. It's just my quick settings up top. And yet, I'll pull down a notification pane on an iOS user, and there's weeks worth of notifications that haven't been dismissed.
I might have. Yeah, I probably do actually. And it's crazy. because their notifications have been I'll just show it. So yeah, just all of them. They're still going. It's still going. It ended last Monday in the morning. Like, I don't want them. No, it's such a mess. They always have been. I think the only time I liked using notifications was, I think it was iOS 9, because it had a nice look about them as well. I'm sure it had like kind of like a black UI with them, and it was really good. And then in iOS 10, they just redid them, which made them look really chunky and really fat. And you just thought, well, they're not grouped anymore. They're white, they're bulky. Where are the group notifications? Then they announced it this year, which got a cheer. But I still think it needs work, because just Notification Center itself, it just seems so badly made. You know, compared to when it was in iOS 8, you had like really like a good design of Notification Center. You could access some widgets inside it. There's some bits that were split, I remember. The notifications were actually, split into, good chunks, and you could arrange them well. But here, it looks like they've just gone, we just put some notifications in now. Oh, we can group them now. That's all from us this year. Farewell. It's odd. And I will say the group ones work better on iPad, but they're still the same on Mac OS. I mean, if I just drag it here, hopefully it won't end this call, because that would be awkward.
This is Skype. Anything could happen.
It's true. Yeah. So it's got the same look of notifications, but it's still got notifications going back to last Tuesday of 9 to 5 Mac, which I don't know why they're still sending me notifications. But yeah, just so weird. And I love Google's approach to them. I really do, especially with Android P as well. I really like those.
Android P is something I'm excited for, and Huawei have done a good job of updates, and it is worth mentioning with Project Treble, their idea of separating the manufacturer ROM from the Google Android source. So the idea being you can update Android without the manufacturer having to do anything. There's sort of two separate modules. Which should have been the way they started it off, to be completely honest. And that's meant that like 8 different manufacturers support the Android beta. You can get it on like a OnePlus, you can get it on Xiaomi phones, you can get it on a bunch of random phones. And it's supposed to mean that Android updates come a lot easier and a lot quicker. And I've noticed it on my Huawei phone, and that's probably just something to do with the fact that it's the latest and greatest right now. I guess the real test, it will be like 2 years from now to see if it's still getting updates. But right now, on like the 12th of every month, I think it is, off the top of my head, there's like an update waiting for me. And I'm the kind of guy that likes getting updates, even if it's like the tiniest thing. I used to,
the same.
On my S7 Edge, I'd install like a different ROM every week, just for the sake of trying it. Just for like, being like, I wonder what this one's like today.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's a shame we can't do it with iOS in a sense, because we can't really customize it a lot, which I think is why a lot of people are waiting for dark mode, because, there's a lot of access with the apps now where dark mode is everywhere in some of these apps, where it's, Overcast, Ulysses that I use, Twitter, Tweetbot, that's all that comes to mind at the moment. But even like you can change the app icons as well, which is, I think, really nice. I mean, I've got the Deliveroo app, and you can change it to the Pride icon, which I've just done because I really like it.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I've changed it and it looks great. But that's all the customization that it goes to, well, apart from the obvious wallpapers and home screens and that. But to have the dark mode on that, so on the iPhone, would be great. I can't help but feel that they're waiting until the launch of the iPhones in September to bring out dark mode, because with the OLED screen, I think dark mode will look really good on it.
Oh,
and that'd be a nice feature.
As a user of OLED devices, I'm sure if you used an iPhone 10, or I assume you have one.
No, I got an 8 Plus at the moment. Yeah.
Like, just the OLED displays are just beautiful, especially for dark mode. And most apps have like a dark mode and a very dark mode, because dark mode tends to be like more of a grey color, and then very dark mode is usually AMOLED specific, which is actually black, specifically for like turning off the pixels. So I know that Pocket Casts does that, as does my Twitter app of choice called Flamingo. So this has like a proper, like this is, the black pixels are actually black. So when I'm scrolling through Twitter, anything that isn't media, and actually this does that same thing. If I press and hold, I get like the force touch effect. Like,
It's just all, isn't it?
like all you have to do is press and hold.
Oh my god. Yeah.
It even gives me like a little vibration, like how you get the vibration when you force touch on an iPhone? It like gives me the same vibration feedback. And I'm someone who hates any vibration. Like, I have keyboard vibration turned off. I have, like, my phone is essentially a brick. And there are times where, like, I even turn off vibration on my phone because I just have it on my watch. Like, if I get a notification come through and I'm not wearing my watch, I won't know about it.
Oh, okay.
Because it's one of those things where it makes having to switch off from my device really simple. Because I take my watch off and I'm sort of disconnected until I next look at my phone.
Yeah.
And so, like, anytime my phone vibrates, I'm like, oh god, why did it do that?
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, well, like with the watch, I don't have any sounds coming from it at all. I just have a vibration on it, and I like the tap that it gives. It's great. But yeah, with the iPhone, I do have a lot of things turned off, and especially with Twitter as well, because they seem to be sending like random notifications of like, oh, some people have been tweeting this. They've been posted this. Here's what you missed. I'm like, I don't want that at all.
That's
I just want
why I've actually removed the standard Twitter app and I use Flamingo, because Twitter is so algorithmic that it's just crazy. So Flamingo is just like, it's basically a Twitter stream of like in real time, and that's it. And that is precisely what I want. Oh, and notifications and messages, obviously. But like the core Twitter experience is just as it happens, and that's it. And that is precisely what I want. It is essentially TweetDeck for mobile.
Yeah. I mean, I use Tweetbot on the iPad, and it's just great. You can just scroll through, and on the right you get your activity with like who's mentioned, who's liked, and whatever. And it's really great. And like you say, you just get the full Twitter experience. You don't get anything else. Whereas if you went on Twitter for iPad, it's such a lot of wasted space and weird notifications that you're never going to read. So yeah, I'd like to see that with Instagram actually, but I can't see that happening anytime soon because Facebook. So
yeah, and actually one thing on the subject of notifications on Android, the notification, what are they called, categories, I believe, that Android has brought out with Oreo and have updated with Android P. I don't know what that's going to be called yet. Probably Peppermint. I don't know. We had an episode discussing this.
Oh God, yeah.
What's
I had one and I've totally forgotten.
We'll
have to use my phone.
But the ability to sort of disable categories of notification as opposed to all notifications outright is really good as well. So, for example, the Android Messages app and WhatsApp, when you're connected via web browser, gives you a persistent notification. Partially so that it stays awake in the background, and partially so you're connected via computer. Because if someone else was to come onto my computer and start snooping through my WhatsApp, it's probably worth knowing. But you can disable notifications only for that, though. So it just hides the persistent notification as opposed to all WhatsApp notifications, which is useless if I get a message.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do with the notifications on iOS. I hope they kind of refine it because, end of the day, I'm not having final judgment on iOS 12. We're only in its second beta, really, and we've got a fair couple of months to go, really, until they refine it. And of course, they've got their own other version of iOS 12, which is just made for the new iOS models that are coming in September. So we're probably going to see some more improvements and features that we haven't even seen yet, really. So if we see some more notification work on that, fantastic. But I think we're probably going to see a lot more of that next year, because this year is pretty much a performance update more than anything.
I guess we've been going for a solid hour and a half. So
wow.
Yeah, I think we should probably start wrapping it up. So I guess my last question to you then is, what is the one feature on, whether it be the iOS for those new iDevices? First of all, actually, before that, what are they going to call them? Are they going to have like an iPhone 9, or have they just decided to ignore the number 9? Because then that's a bit of a problem.
I'd say what I've been thinking about this for a while, and I think it's the hint is at the iPhone 10 name, because I've believed since it came out that we are now at the second chapter of iPhone. You know, the iPhone 10 was the start of that. It's the introduction to it, and I think we've got to see that as the second generation iPhone. Like overall, the last 10 years has been the first gen.
Yeah.
In many small steps.
It's iPhone season 2.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so in September, I think we're going to see, the iPhone 10 second generation, the iPhone 10 Plus, because people like a bigger size phone, and then kind of another iPhone 10 style phone, but it's going to have the LCD and the no like haptic engine or even Force Touch perhaps. That one, I'm not sure what it's going to be called. I
reckon they're going to go back to their very well-known iPhone 10C. Because that worked out so well for them last time.
Yeah.
Anyone I know with a C phone, like with the iPhone 5C, everyone I knew with one was so resentful about having to have one. Like,
yeah, I remember that.
Because I was a teenager. I'd have been, when was that? What, 4 years ago? I'd have been 16-ish, 15, 16, in that age range. And so everyone who had it was like just my kids, because parents would buy them because it was the cheapest iPhone on the market at that point. And so they were all so resentful for having to own an iPhone 5C.
Yeah, I really don't know what it could be called. It could just be called iPhone. That could be one factor. So you got the iPhone 10 second gen, iPhone 10 Plus second gen, and then that's it. I'd be amazed if they called it like the 11 or the 10-2, getting into Final Fantasy territory. I doubt it. I really do. But I think that's my best guess. But yeah, they have been known to prove me wrong before.
Yeah, they've been known to make very bizarre choices, so we can't rule anything out.
No.
For all we know, they'll call it the iPhone 9, and then next year they'll call that one the iPhone 10 again, but with like proper numbers as opposed to the X. Like, no, this is the real iPhone 10.
Just forget that one from 2 years ago. This is the one.
This is the iPhone 10.
Yeah, the in the name. Yeah. Oh well, yeah.
iPhone the 10.
iPhone the 10, yeah. I can see that working well on O2. Oh wow.
So my original question was going to be, what is the software, I guess, feature that you most hope to see, short of tidying up something that's already there, like notifications? Is there something that you're like, oh, I can't wait for them to implement this piece of software?
Now the thing is, I feel with the software side, with iPhone, we're about there now. It's really the hardware that we're kind of looking at improvements for, whether it's Face ID, better Face ID, and things like that. When it's like emoji or me emoji, so I think it's there in the software side. A bit of low-hanging fruit to grab, and that's it. Whereas the iPad, I think it's the other way around. The hardware size, we are there now. It's reaching like MacBook levels of a couple of years ago now. If a new iPad came out this year, I wouldn't be tempted to upgrade, because all it would probably gain is Face ID, and that's it. Whereas I'm not really ready to go to Face ID. I like the home button on the iPad. I just prefer it. So I think the software side, there's a lot to go with the iPad. So what do I want to see on the iPad software side? Oh, there's a lot. I mean, I've said before that I want it to be separate from iOS now. I want there to be an iPad OS. I think that's going to be the best way to differentiate itself now and really move it into a not just a pro market, but it can open itself up to other apps that may not have had it access before, like the Marzipan update, which is going to allow the same code base run on macOS and iOS. I think that's going to work for iPad next year, first of all, not iPhone. So I think with that, what could it be? I think better multitasking support on the bigger device, because with the 10.5 and the 12.9, you have the same software completely. The only difference you've got is it's the bigger resolution on the iPad. So I think if they had maybe, instead of like a split screen multitasking, if they had maybe a 3-pane one instead, and then you could have like a better picture-in-picture support, so you can maybe like, do the timeline instead, and maybe, different like playlists you could use on the picture-in-picture mode in the rectangle in the corner. Get 3 panes, like maybe Notes, Twitter, Safari, the screen's big enough to handle that. That's fine. You're going to have a lot of screen space left. And then that way, you're just going to be able to just go mad with productivity on the iPad. And then, if they bring out the better keyboard support, I think you're just kind of laughing. But like I say, there's a lot of fruit there to pick with the iPad. But that's probably one of the first ones I'd hope to see next year.
I will say the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is comically large. Not least because it's just a massive iPad, but because they still have like 5x5 app icons on the springboard. Every time I see it, I just can't help but laugh a little. I'm just like, that screen is 90% empty space. Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree. Even on my 10.5 right now, I'm just looking at it now. I mean, it doesn't make sense. You could have like some widgets there easily. You could even do the Force Touch side where you can have like certain widgets appear. There's a lot of space there that could be used. But there have been rumours of the springboard being refreshed, and they put it back because they wanted to do performance this year. So we could see that next year happen. But yeah, it's like you say, it's very large. And I have seen people like in train commutes, on like a tight, sitting there just looking at it. I'm just like, that's not right. But then again, back in the day, we saw people use massive broadsheets of the Guardian, the Times, and that was bigger than an iPad. So I don't think we're far off. But at the moment, I'm happy with the 10.5. But if you bring those improvements to the 12.9 more, I may be tempted. We'll see. Awesome. So, Daryl, thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. It's been
remind everyone where to go to check you out, where all your stuff is.
Yeah, so I'm mainly on 2 social medias, really. So it's the Twitter, so it's Daryl Baxter, all one word. That's all it is. Instagram's the same as well. And of course, you can join them, Outpost Show. So the easiest way to find it is either on Twitter or just applepodcast.com/The Outpost Show, and it'll take you straight to it. But it is available on other apps as well. New episode is coming a week tomorrow with a great guest. He's an Apple pundit, and we record tomorrow. So it's I'm really looking forward to that one. It should be a good one.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. If you're listening to this live, you're done good. Congratulations. If you want to listen to this again later, when it's... I've decided I'm going to rename the Snappy-Tech Podcast RSS feed to like the Snappy-Tech Podcast Remastered or something. But if you want to listen to that, as always, go to snpy.tech/podcast. If you really enjoyed this and want to donate a cup of coffee, go to snpy.tech/coffee. That link is on screen. Show notes are, as always, in the show notes section, as they do. Or in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, the audio version. So if you're using an iOS device, go to snpy.tech/iTunes. If you want to go to Daryl's website and you're obsessed with Snappy-Tech links as opposed to proper URLs, you can go to snpy.tech/Daryl and that'll take you to his website. So you can do that. We just links for days. Snapchat is snpy.tech/Snapchat. There's Twitter, there's Facebook, there's Instagram. Just type in a random word and see where it takes you.
Just try a look.
Yeah, you never know. If it doesn't exist and you want it to exist, mention me on Twitter. Be like, hey, at G_Chachanidze, we want this link, and I'll make it happen.
MySpace. Live journal.
No. MySpace, the fact that MySpace still exists is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you go do that, and we will see you next Sunday, where we will know whether or not it has come home. Bye. Bye.
Bye.